One of the things I want to say is there's a lot of talk going on about how this is a white nationalist movement. Now, people are focusing on the 2 or 3 people with the Nazi flag that they saw in a group of 1 million people. Let me break down something called sample size. Now, when you've got 1 million people and you've got 3 people in that group carrying a Nazi flag, because everybody loves science, sciences are called outliers. The bigger your sample size is, the more outliers you're gonna find. That's just statistics. Meaning, if you have a big enough sample size, you can find a fucking Teletubby. Why? Because you have such a big population, you can find just about anything. Guess what? They did the same shit with the PCR test. If you use a PCR test and you magnify it big enough, you can find just about anything. And to judge an entire convoy of millions of people off 10 people in that millions of people are doing is fucking ludicrous. Out of 100,000 Canadians, 104 of them are incarcerated. Should we judge all Canadians as criminals based on that logic because we're focusing on the 104 out of the 100,000 Canadians that are incarcerated? Or would you think it's fair that somebody judges you on the worst moments you've had in your life or the most shameful moments you had in your life? If we magnified and just focus on that, would you think that was fair to you, the totality of your character and the totality of who you are and what you stand for? The most people affected by vaccination passports are minorities, meaning blacks, white, Asians, and Hispanics, and Native people. So that means if it was a white nationalist movement, why would a white nationalist movement stand up for something that would allow these minorities to get their jobs back? Because no longer would they be segregated. This is not about being anti-vax or vax. This is about freedom and having the choice and not being fired from your job and be able to break bread for the choices you make to not take a shot. Meaning, if this was a white nationalist movement, why would they support minorities going back to work to break bread and put food on the table? Don't get it twisted. The real Nazi movement is segregation. The real Nazi movement is telling people that they have a disease so they can segregate them from society and block them from breaking bread and putting food on the table for their family based on their conscientious beliefs that they have. The real Nazi ideology is shutting down businesses for their choice not to take a shot. The real Nazi ideology is breaking things like the Nuremberg Code, the Healthcare Consent Acts, universal law, and common law. That's the real Nazi ideology, not someone standing up for freedom. Just in case people forgot, they have what was called a Guten Time Pass back in Nazi Germany, which was also called, coincidentally, a health pass. So now you see people that are standing up for freedom and actually following the law. And the people that are following the law and standing up for their rights are now being seen as a white nationalist Nazi movement. Are you fried? It's time to really pay attention to what you're being told. And if you think it's a white nationalist movement, I already know you're brainwashed. It's really, you're just exposing yourself. And last time I checked, a white nationalist movement doesn't consist of a bunch of minorities holding up flags that say freedom. A white nationalist movement doesn't consist of a bunch of children holding up signs that say freedom. A white nationalist movement doesn't consist of children writing letters to truck drivers saying, "We know what you're doing is right. Thank you for standing up for us." That to me doesn't sound like a white nationalist movement. A lot of people have been fooled for 2 years to believe that segregation is unity. They've been fooled to believe that denying somebody the right to break bread and put food on the table for their conscientious belief, which is protected in universal law, the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, the Ontario Healthcare Consent Act, and the Nuremberg Code, you've been made to believe that somehow segregating those people and punishing those people is unity. Your definition of unity has been morphed and warped to fit a Nazi ideology. But you still don't understand that 2 years later. You look at 2 people you saw on media, you listen to CTV News, you listen to people like Brandon Gomez, that fucking loser, and you think, oh, people are vandalizing shit. Oh my God, since when is putting a flag on a Canadian vandalism? If putting a flag on a Canadian is vandalism, then maybe we shouldn't do it when our Olympians win their gold medal. People can still choose to call this a white nationalist movement, but last time I checked, I got black skin and dreadlocks. I guess I'm a white nationalist. I guess all the Indians and all the black people that are at the protests are also white nationalists. I guess the children that are there too, that are standing up for freedom while you sit behind a computer and call it a Nazi movement, I guess those children are white nationalist children too. And the other issue we're facing now is within every movement, there might be an underlying agenda that a lot of people are not aware of. There is more people awake now than there ever has been in the modern era. So typically speaking, even if they try to run their agenda, as long as the message remains the same, I really believe humanity has nothing to worry about. Why? The people hold the power. And as long as we remember that, it doesn't matter what other agendas people are having. Yeah, be aware of it, but at the end of the day, stand true to the message. And as long as the message remains the same, which is peace, which is freedom, which is choice, people do not have anything to worry about. Why? Because the awakening is something that cannot be stopped.